Hello and welcome to Interlagos, Sao Paulo, Brazil for round 2 of the VMS Pro Series on Le Mans Ultimate. My name is Edward Hunter. Joining me in the commentary box is Braden Hill and our broadcast director, Nicholas Domino. Well, 1 week ago, it all began, didn't it, at Spa-Francorchamps, Braden? And now here we are for round 2, a shorter event, only a 1-hour sprint in prospect here, as opposed to the 2.5-hour endurance event we saw at Spa, but less time certainly doesn't mean we're going to get less action. It's just a more condensed package of all-out drama for our 37-car field of GT3s and Hypercars. I'm really excited. What about you, Braden?
Yeah, I couldn't be more excited about this. Last week we saw the spoils of victory and the unfortunate defeat. Kieran Prendergast just came up short, having thought that he had enough fuel and ended up giving away that win to Kamal Nawi at the very end of the race. I expect no less excitement here around Interlagos. It may be shorter, like you said, but no less excitement around these corners of Brazil.
And of course, with a shorter race, it means qualifying coming up in a few short minutes' time is going to be ever more important. But yeah, this man, Prendergast, had that last-minute heartbreak, of course, where he ran out of fuel and crawled to a halt just meters away from the finish line, ultimately, that did hand the victory to Kamal Nawi. So he did, of course, still get the points for second, which does, of course, mean he is second in that GT3 Championship to Nawi with loads more points to play for over the course of the season. Hypercars, of course, it was a big, dramatic contest in terms of the strategy, really, between eventual winner Jene Simoncic in the BMW, another BMW runner, Michi Hoyer, of course, good friends with Jene Simoncic, and of course, it was Mario Tump in the Porsche that held on to third from a charging Davin Rokcek, of course, did probably the move of the race, didn't he, on, it was the other Porsche, wasn't it, of Mark Veit.
Mark Veit, yeah.
And of course,
Yeah,
you see him
Marocek.
in this practice session, fastest once more. That's a bit of a theme, isn't it? Marocek really, really quick going into these races, and then tended to qualify a little bit further down and giving himself a lot of work to do. So he's going to have to go some to really. It could well be that Simoncic and company are leaving the best till last come the Hypercar qualifying.
Yeah, and Marocek showed incredible speed despite being the only Lamborghini in the field. But all across the field, we had some storylines. We saw the likes of Arda Urchan have problems early on. We saw just how quickly things can go wrong, even in an endurance race. And I'm sure things are going to be happening even quicker this week with just an hour on the clock when we drop the green flag.
Yeah, of course, Urchan. We didn't quite see it on stream, but Urchan was one of several Ferrari GT3s that spun at the top of Oruge and Radion, and that really compromised his race. In the end, Arda Urchan failing to finish. But now might be a good opportunity to take a look at our standings, overall standings in Hypercar and GT3. Here is the Hypercar standings. Jene Simoncic, of course, taking the victory and the full 39 points that came with it from Michi Hoyer in the other BMW, 28 points for second. Mario Tump finished third, just holding off Davin Marocek. Marocek, apparently, on his final pit stop, I believe he may have cut the pit exit line, and that led to him getting a slowdown, essentially, as a sort of in-game kind of penalty. And that was why he was so far behind at the final pit stop, but nonetheless still was able to charge back up to fourth in the end. Fabio Grigoletto, we should watch out for him because he qualified on the front row, briefly took the lead at the start, and for pretty much most of the first hour of that race at Spa was leading Simoncic until he made a mistake at the bus stop chicane, which handed first position back to the Slovenian. Mark Veit, of course, we talked about him. He finished in sixth with just ahead of Jules Neal in the final order there. Another promising Frenchman in the Cadillac. One of many Frenchmen have picked the Cadillac, actually. Aurelien Bru is another. He's eighth in the points, ahead of Italian Daniele Farinelli. Our top 10 is rounded out by Bert Knops, who, of course, took home 3 points for finishing in that position in his Porsche. GT3 standings, Kamal Naui, he won, of course, somewhat unexpectedly, but he definitely put together a superb race that enabled him to take advantage of the opportunity when Prendergast ran out of fuel right in the end. He was saving as much as he could, but it wasn't quite enough for poor Kieran. And Kieran, because he didn't quite cross the finish line, he's denied the extra point that you get in the endurance rounds for finishing the race, essentially, because he didn't quite finish his final lap. He gets 27 points finishing second, but he was a lap ahead of Sebastian Wunsch, so he didn't lose any further positions. But that 1 point, you never know, could come in handy. He could be ruining missing out on that point come the end of the season. Sebastian Wunsch had a horrible, he's one of the Ferraris that spun at the top of Eau Rouge, recovered with clever strategy, pitting early on to get back up to third. He gets 24 points. Callum Cripps is fourth on 19 points. Then it's Fabien Ballet, who put in some good moves to get into fifth. Ahead of Regan Mitchell in sixth. Michel Rodriguez, not that Michel Rodriguez, he finishes in seventh. Luca Fingard was eighth ahead of Valtteri Mannanen and South African Zach Vermaak, who sadly is not going to be with us today, but he is still 10th in the championship at the present moment. So all still to play for, so it could well be that this is a crucial round, even though it's only 25 points for the win in each class. It's the F1 point system this time around. So as we see practice just about to end, Braden, it's all very well poised, very well set up, isn't it, for another fantastic, frenetic encounter at Interlagos. And let's talk about Interlagos, isn't it? Because 16 corners, essentially, really, really fast circuit and some really, really good overtaking opportunities into the center S. And at the end of this straight here, down the Retroposta into Descida de Lago, I think those are the two key overtaking spots.
Yeah, and the real key here, we saw the importance of managing traffic last week. That's going to be even more of a talking point this week. Very few passing opportunities, and yet the delta in speed between the GT3s and the Hypercars will be no less significant this week. So it's going to be incredibly important for all of these drivers to be on their game, for the GT3s, especially to be able to hold their line, but also for the Hypercars to navigate that, both for the sake of not getting wrecked and for making as much time as possible. Getting caught in the wrong spot on an in-lap or an out-lap, especially with only one pit stop expected today, is going to be crucial for anyone who wants to take home victory or even a podium spot today.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to do quite so much clever stuff with the strategy in a shorter race. We also saw there David Levy, the Spaniard, I think making his first appearance of the season after missing Spa. So it'll be exciting to see what David can do here as we cut back to Michi Hoyer, of course. Michi Hoyer, he sort of went for shorter pit stops, didn't he, in the first couple of stints at Spa to get that overall lead in track position. But come the end, Simoncic was able to sort of short fuel it and jump his former teammate, essentially, in the FSR World Championship quite comfortably in the end by about 8 seconds, although final couple laps he did cut the gap down to about 4 or 5 seconds. And is another driver looking for redemption after a really messy run from pole position. Prendergast jumped him at the start and then spinning at the top of the hill at Eau Rouge. So Arda Erkcan, the Turkish driver, probably feeling a little bit under pressure here, not getting the championship off to the ideal start, but at least his former teammate Kamal Naui stole the win from Prendergast, and Prendergast is going to be a bigger challenger for that title. And Erkcan, of course, thankful that he didn't come away with the full 39 points.
No, absolutely. And in the broader scope of the championship, you never know how important a single point can be. But changing subject a little bit to the weather out on track, it's going to be a toasty one. We talked a little bit about how kind of cold it was at Spa, given early in the year weather conditions. Quite the opposite here in Brazil. Hot conditions, which means the tires are going to be grippy and sticky, but it also means that they're going to wear out significantly faster. Tire management is going to be a vital aspect of today's race.
Yeah, much warmer here in the Sao Paulo, Brazil, than it was in the Ardennes Forest at Spa for our first round, of course, where it sort of was a bit overcast by the end of the race, but much more pleasant weather here, sunny climes in South America. So then, practice ends, and that, of course, means qualifying for the GT3 is about to begin. So a reminder, the GT3s will all be let out first, and it won't be a separate qualifying. They'll all be qualifying together. And then after about 15 minutes or so, the Le Mans Hypercars will be unleashed to do battle for the overall pole position as well. So this just to make sure that while each class only has to worry about each other until we get to the race. And of course, Erchan will be keen to get another pole position, but Prendergast, we saw exactly how quick he was once he was unleashed at Spa-Francorchamps and didn't have Erchan in front of him. He was able to build a huge lead at one point early in the race, like 14 seconds, I think it was the biggest that gap got. So yeah, Kieran Prendergast will be fired up after that disappointment at Spa and looking to really get his season well and truly underway once more.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Prendergast performs in this qualifying session. I think track position is going to be especially important given how short this race is. Again, for those who aren't familiar, this is one of our sprint rounds. So instead of a 2.5 hour race, only 1 hour on the clock when we drop the rag to get these cars underway. And speaking of dropping the rag, the cars have just been cleared to go out of the pit lane and start lapping. We ride on board now with Arda Urchin and the Vista AF Corsa Ferrari, just behind another of the Ferraris just ahead. And so we're going to have to put extra emphasis as we watch on these qualifying laps, because they are going to be vital to making sure that you stay out of trouble through the Senna S's at the beginning of the lap, but also that you have the best possible track position when you head into the pit lane.
Indeed. So, yeah, you certainly want to leave that last run when the track conditions are at their best, and that's exactly what Erchan did at Spa. If you remember, that he was the last man over the line and narrowly beat Prendergast at the end of that qualifying session. So he'll be hoping that lightning strikes twice and he can do it again. But of course, the later you lead that lap, the more pressure you put on yourself to do the job, essentially, because there's a different kind of pressure once the checker flag's out and all of a sudden you haven't got the luxury of, I can just go back to the pits and put some fresh tires on. No, you've got to do the job now, and it's a much shorter lap here at Interlagos as well, so he's got to do it all very, very quickly. He hasn't got too many long straights to sit and think about it down the Camel Straight like you did at Spa. It's all action all the time here.
Yeah, not nearly as much time to relax, try to gather your thoughts on the straights, but that also means that there's going to be fewer easy overtaking areas for the hypercars. The hypercars obviously have much better acceleration than these GT3s, but the GT3s don't make any mistake. They are very quick in the corners, and that sometimes can pose quite the headache for our hypercar runners as they try to navigate through. There are going to be far fewer opportunities and a lot more opportunities to end up wrecked if a GT3 doesn't know you're trying to go around the outside of them, as now I believe we're still riding on board with Arda Urchin and heads onto the back straightaway, Reda Aposta, and heading rapidly into turns 4 and 5.
Yep, so a little bit of a shaky start as he had to have a couple of goes turning the car in as it starts to fight him through Decido de Lago. Now he goes uphill towards Ferradura, the really fast right-hander. You sometimes see people completing overtakes into that corner, but it is really, really risky, especially if you're on the outside there. It's very hard to make it through then. Into the SS and the infield he goes. This is Pinherino, turn 9. He's just going through now. It takes an age to get back on the throttle as now he goes towards Bica di Pato, turn 10. The Ducks Bill, the right-hander there, and that's another one where it's so easy to lock up. You're especially going to see the hypercars locking up a couple of times through there, I would suspect. Downhill through Maguilo into Junchao, the junction. And again, plenty of curb used on the inside, and especially on the exit by Erchan, as he now cuts right to the inside to get the shortest line and get to the back to that start-finish line in the shortest time possible, you will hope. This will be the benchmark then that all of the rest of the GT3s will be trying to match. The Ferrari comes towards the line. What is Erchan's first lap going to look like? We can't see just yet there. 1:34.022. Now in Erchan, surprisingly, setting the exact same lap time to 3 decimal places there. So they're both former teammates at Black Hawk Racing in a Virtual Endurance Championship GT3s. It seems not only are they sharing a car together, they're sharing a lap time.
Yeah, and this is going to be kind of shades of the rest of the season. Lots of back and forth between these drivers. Again, now last week's winner, Erchan, very well could have been in contention if not for misfortune on the very first lap. And Erchan is going to be hoping to assert his dominance in this round. He'll certainly you don't want the worst for your former teammate, but certainly wouldn't mind seeing some troubles for Kamal Nawi this round to try to catch up on that points deficit that Arda Ercan has to overcome as he comes around for yet another lap. Looking at our top three so far, it really is the people we've talked about. Naui, Ercan, and Prendergast, the top three. Sebastian Wunsch also up in fourth position. We saw a lot of speed out of him. One person I think we could keep an eye on as well is Rassi. We've not talked a whole lot about him, but another of the drivers in the Ferrari. He's got a lot of experience and is going to certainly be looking for an opportunity to capitalize on any sort of issues that anyone ahead has. So that's someone to keep a look at. And similarly, who else was I looking at? Bazita. Bazita is someone else we need to take a look at. Elise, however you'd like to pronounce that, the Canadian driver, the Corvette, was the fastest, seemed to have the best pace of the two Corvettes, and hopefully is going to be able to fly the banner for the American brand, the North American sister to our Canadian driver, and hopefully put a podium finishing position together.
It's interesting you mentioned Rassi and Abuzita because both of them looked fairly strong in the sort of bottom half of the top 10 in GD3 last time out, but neither of them quite getting to the end of the endurance race. Hopefully the sprint will mean it should be a better chance for them to score points then with a shorter race, less chance of things to go wrong, essentially. But yeah, certainly it was great to see Buzita really so positive, beaming about not only Le Mans Ultimate, but the VMS Pro Championship as well. And we're, of course, very glad to have him in that very noisy Corvette, lighting up the timing screen as well, though Manninen in the other Corvette has gone a little bit faster now, and we see Prendergast has pumped in a 133.7, which puts him over 2.5 tenths clear of Naui and Ercan, and it looks like Naui has maybe actually gone a 100th of a second faster than Ercan. So the 54 and the 55 separated by 1,000th of a second, but Prendergast, he has certainly found another gear here and has dipped himself well into the 33.
Yeah, and that gap is going to be important again. Getting through the Senna SS is going to be important as we see Sebastian Wunsch coming into the pit lane. He's going to abort this lap and hopefully try another one. Riding on board or following now Valtteri Manninen, who's improved in both the first and second sector over his initial time. Currently going to try to beat a 133.761. Again, that's set by Kieran Prendergast. As he comes down the straightaway, he's going to set a lap 34.495. I think we could see a 33.5 if Prendergast really gets up on the wheel and gets after it, but at least for right now, that is only good enough for 8th position for Manninen there. Matteo Blotto, we haven't talked about him very much yet today in the number 86 GR Racing Ferrari. He has set a purple middle sector, so he's going to hope to come around here and set a strong lap time, only 1.189 of a second slower than our fastest time in the first sector. Let's see whether or not he is able to eclipse that time. 133.814, that's going to be good enough for second position in the number 86.
Yeah, very, very good middle sector there. 2.5 tenths quicker than Prendergast and anybody else in the GT3 for that matter, as we see time starting to run out here. Last couple of minutes left to go in GT3 qualifying. But yeah, Matteo Blotto, who was third early on at Spa, had an almighty crash, I think, at the top of Radion while chasing down Naui, this man. So Blotto, it's a case of really what could have been for him and Arda Ercan too, for that matter. But yeah, certainly making up for it now with another really, really good performance in qualifying, less than a 10th behind Kieran Prendergast. But of course, we're yet to really see Naui and Ercan improve from their first runs. So potentially there is just that little bit more time in the Ferrari to come. At the moment, Prendergast in the McLaren has certainly got them at arm's length at the moment, as we see the 59 just getting out of Kamal Naui's way there. That could be Callum Cripps, who is in 6th position, just a 10th behind Sebastian Wunsch then. But yeah, we sort of said, oh, it's Prendergast, Naui, Ercan, and now suddenly Matteo Blotto has reappeared in surprises. I wonder how many more surprises in these final few laps we're going to see then. Naui not looking particularly quick in the middle sector here, so he'll have to gear up for another run, our championship leader.
Yeah, and for those of you just joining us, you are watching the Virtual Motorsport Pro Series. This is Le Mans Ultimate that you're watching right now. Don't be fooled. It's not a Assetto Corsa Competizione. It's not our Factor 2. It's Le Mans Ultimate. Up in the booth, we have Edward Hunter, myself, Braden Hill and Nicholas Domino running the cameras for the sights and sounds of the virtual Interlagos Raceway. And this is certainly an exciting race we have queued up for you today.
Yeah, we see a couple of comments in the chat. Uh, David John Gibbons says the BMW is just easier to drive being FR, and he says the Corvette is the fastest at Interlagos with immediate qualification in the right hands. So let's hope Maninen and Buzita have got the right hands on them, because it's very difficult to swap out hands at this phase of the when you're using them on track. Maybe you can put some gloves on and try and shape them to be better hands, but I think it's the brain that's controlling the hands that's the more dominant factor in the lap times here. As we see Matteo Blotto getting right over the curb there at Pinharina, then desperately trying to shave any little millisecond he can off of this lap time here. You see he's on a personal best, but slightly down on Prendergast this time around. Can he replicate that brilliant middle sector? Again, really far over the curb. He's risking it in that Ferrari, the GR Racing car. Oh, a little bit down on his overall best, so it's all going to come down to this final sector, Braden. I think he might just fall a little bit short of Prendergast once again.
Yeah, but keep in mind, he holds the fastest middle sector, so 26 thousandths of a second, not too far off. He's still in a position where he could, not if he comes in the pit lane. He's certainly not going to be able to set a fastest lap there. He's going to come into the pit lane, and that'll just about be his last opportunity to make improvements on his lap time. We take a look now at Callum Cripps in the United Auto Sports number 59 McLaren, orange and black, sported on that car with Richard Mill, the main sponsor on the sides and on the hood of the mid-engine McLaren. Again, 1 minute 33.761 the time to beat, with Kieran Prendergast at the top of the charts, 53 thousandths of a second just down to Matteo Blotto. Then Kamal Nawi, currently in the 54. He has scored third position. So it's Ferraris and McLarens up at the front of the field, exactly what we saw previously at Spa, but we'll see if we have any upsetters from the BMWs. Gassier is the first score to the BMWs in 14th, or from the Corvettes, Maninen is currently the top scored of those in the 10th position.
Yeah, we saw a brief yellow flag there. I wasn't sure quite what that was on circuit, but it's cleared now, so that shouldn't hold up Callum Cripps here to be watching at the moment, trying to improve on that 6th position. He's about 2.5 tenths down on both Prendergast and a little bit down on his personal best in the first sector. Middle sector, 1.4 seconds off, so Cripps looking for grip, but not quite finding it, unfortunately for him. Arda Ercan, if he's leaving it late for another pole lap here, he is certainly taking his time about it, because I think Cripps might be the last man on track, and into the pit lane he goes. So it looks like our grid order is potentially going to be Prendergast, Blotto, Naui, Vunch, Ercan, Cripps, Gaspar, Liskovitz, Ballet, and Maninen are top 10, with Elise Buzita, I think, still on a lap here, trying to improve on a 15th position, of course. He did a few laps ago improve on Mitchell's time, Regan Mitchell, who's actually qualified a little bit further back than I think he would have expected there. And Elise Buzita, I think, has he got enough time for one more run, or is he heading into the pits, Braden? I think he might be just ending the session here.
Yeah, I think that's just about going to be all the time we have for this session, and so that's going to make it just about final that Kieran Prendergast will be your pole setter, and just as we say that, Elise Bazita comes into the pit lane and will surrender that car to the hands of his very capable virtual team, and that is just about going to end it for our GT3 qualifying. Why don't you go ahead and run us down?
Yep, very quickly then. So it's Kieran Prendergast on pole position, 133.6 with Matteo Blotto second, Kamal Naui third, Sebastian Vunch will start fourth for the second race in a row. Arda Ercan, pole sitter last time out, he starts fifth ahead of Callum Cripps, and it's Louis Gaspar seventh, Erwin Liskovitz eighth, Fabian Ballet ninth, Valtteri Mannin in 10th, Michelle Rodriguez in 11th, Alexi Rassi 12th, Ryan Littlemore in 13th. Kakpa Gacia in his first appearance is 14th ahead of Elise Buzita. Then it's Regan Mitchell 16th. Fingard will start in 17th, with Marcus Crawford not setting a lap time at all, and he will start once again from the back of the grid. Now, I got to go downstairs very quickly and eat dinner, Braden. I will join you right at the end of the Hypercar qualifying, but I leave you in the capable hands of Braden Hill.
Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We're now going to wait for the clock to strike 11 minutes, 20 seconds remaining. We're now on board with the Lamborghini of David Marokchek, who will be one of the first out, and certainly we can anticipate to be one of the fastest out on track. Just a few moments' time, we'll hear the roar of these hypercar engines, and especially the V8 Cadillac that everyone loves so much from these LMDH rule sets. As we see now, Marokchek going to come out of the pit lane. They've been set free, and we're going to unleash these very powerful hypercars out on track. The first of them out on track is one of our Ferraris. I'm not sure exactly which of those it is. Let's take a look here. I believe that would be Julian Guerin, if I'm not mistaken. Either that or Marco De Bono. We'll have to see who that is at the very front. We're on board here now. Yes, it is Marco De Bono in the number 50 Ferrari AF Corsa, so he's going to lead us out on track and be the first to set a hot lap time. This track is going to be especially tricky for these hypercars going round and around, trying to make sure that they don't get into any trouble with the GT3 traffic. We know the GT3s are significantly quick in the corners, especially compared to the hypercars. Yes, they do have a lot of downforce, those hypercars, but the mechanical grip maybe lacks a little bit as compared to our GT3s, and the GT3s do have plenty of downforce themselves to carry through those corners. So especially through the tighter parts of the circuit, we expect to see quite a bit of chaos in areas like Pico de Pato, the turn 10 kind of double apex to the right-hand side, heading towards the back half of the lap. And the Senna S also going to be a very interesting spot to keep an eye on as we progress. Marco De Bono, again, going to be our first car out, but it looks like Marokchek's actually going to overtake him. So that's going to be the Lamborghini out first. Marokchek wants to be the first to put down a lap. He was fastest in practice a little bit earlier on, as we see him just scrubbing those tires, trying to get heat into the front Michelins as best he can. You can hear the squeal of the tires begging for mercy, begging for heat, and they're going to be a lot easier to get up to temperature. That's going to make the pit strategy rather interesting as the race progresses. Talking about pit strategy, we expect to see just one pit stop from each of our drivers, about 40 minutes in a stint for both of the classes. Track position, once again, is going to be critical in seeing if people are going to keep those tires that they have on the cars or maybe take right sides only. So a little bit of variation I would expect in the stinting of tires. Might see somebody try to get some 4 fresh Michelins and go make a difference. As we ride on board now with Marokchek, going to go around down the front straightaway. Let's go for a lap of Interlagos. First, going to go into the Senna S. Starts sector 1. Time on the clock. Just misses the apex maybe a little bit in turn 1. Through turn 2 and back onto Curva de Sol. The Red Aposta going to be one of the very few opportunities these drivers have to take a breath, collect their thoughts, and think about exactly what it is they're about to do as he goes through turns 4 and 5 to Cida del Lago by the lake. Going to carry a ton of speed here, hold it to the left-hand side, still holding a purple sector is David Marokchek. Going to throw this car to the right-hand side, tries to use as much of the curb on the left-hand side as possible. Something we're going to have to note is these drivers are only allowed 3 off tracks before they will be assessed a penalty by race control. We'll keep you appraised as to any penalties that might come up. Headed through turn 10 now, double right-hander, kind of dual apex here. Pico de Pato going to move into turn 11, fast flowing to the left-hand side here, going to use as much of the track as possible on the right-hand side without going off track. Certainly don't want at this point to lose the lap. Yellow flag for at least a moment here. Seems somebody maybe had some issues elsewhere on track. Back onto the kind of corner that isn't a corner. 14 and 15 at the very end of the circuit. Marokchek's going to set a lap time here. What's going to be the top? 1:23.051 is going to be the time to beat by David Marokchek. We look now at Michi Hoyer in the number 15 BMW. He was very fast last week at Spa. We'll see if he's able to overcome the speed of his BMW teammate, Jernej Simoncic, who was our pole sister last week. I made a little bit of an error, called him the pole sister, and it seems to have stuck. So we'll see if he can be the pole sister once again. If he is going to do so, he's going to have to beat a 1:23.011 that's just been set by Fabio Gregoletto at the top of the charts. Marco De Buono also with a respectable time, currently scored in the 3rd position. We've not seen laps yet from the likes of Mario Tump, Mark Veit, or Jules Neal. Jules Neal showed quite a bit of speed last week at Spa as well. He would be somebody that I would like to keep an eye on throughout the week here. one of the multiple Whelan-colored Cadillacs, the red on the front fading to the Cadillac colors at the back. That time in the first sector, an improvement for Jules Neal, but still over 2/10 of a second off of the ultimate pace of Rigoletto, who holds the fastest time right now out on track. He's going to go ahead and try to set his first lap. Now, again, looking at the top of the field, it's Grigoletto, Marokchek, De Bono, Knops, Veit, Guerin. That's your top 6. Lorito, Grigod, Tump, and Farinelli are your top 10 right now, but still long time to go. 5 minutes and 38 seconds is a long time in terms of qualifying. That's quite a few laps when you're only running 1 minute 22.7s. So Marokchek, actually, just as I say that, has gone back to the top of the time, 1 minute 22.745. I think Marokchek might just have the pace here, 0.135 seconds over Grigoletto that time, able to hold off the other of the wheeling Cadillac. Jules Neal comes across the line to put down a 1:23.599, a very respectable time there from the other of the 311 Cadillacs that will struggle, I'm sure, throughout the day to identify, as these liveries are only those so far that we see in the real-life racing. And here is last week's winner, Jerne Simoncic for BMW Team WRT in the very colorful paint scheme that was featured at Le Mans in real life. He's 155 off of the fastest time in the first sector, but it is a personal improvement for Jerne Simoncic. He's still got to beat 22.745 if he wants to sit on the pole here for the second week consecutively in this series. If you're just joining us, this is the Virtual Motorsport Series. We appreciate you joining us. Myself, Braden Hill, and Nick Domino up in the broadcast booth. Edward Hunter getting a bite to eat at the moment, but he will be joining us for the race start. 0.3 of a second off in that second sector for Jerne Simoncic. I don't think this is going to be enough pace for him to put anything more than really a top 5 or so on the board. Michi Hoyer, his BMW teammate, currently scored in the 5th position. 0.8 of a second off of the ultimate pace he put down. He's actually got the fastest final sector, a 1:23.192. That is going to be good enough for 3rd position right now for Simoncic. Let's see how well he does when he goes around yet again. We now look at David Levis for Porsche Penske Motorsport. That's the number 4 Porsche Penske car. So one of the 3 different liveries that have different numbers but look basically identical. So we appreciate patience from those in the chat, those watching along, for any misspeaks we inevitably will have. A 1:23.408 put down by David Levis. That's good enough for 5th position. So right now it's actually all of the Penskes, all the Porsches are all kind of lined up together. Mario Tump, David Levis, and Mark Veit, all 4th, 5th, and 6th consecutive leads. 6, 4, and 5 cars in order there, all kind of in a grouping. So at the top of the field, it's Lamborghini, Cadillac, BMW, followed by Porsche, BMW, Porsche, Cadillac, Ferrari. So Ferrari rounds out the top 10 with Marco De Buono. We look now at Gaten Guidel. We didn't talk a whole lot about him last week. Kind of did a good job of staying out of trouble generally. Currently scored in the 17th position. He's going to try to beat a 1:22.745, but was 0.4 off in the first sector, another 0.8 off in the second sector. I don't think this is going to be a particularly blistering lap from him, but certainly one that is respectable nonetheless, putting a time down. Someone else we didn't talk about in the race much last week was Mariansky. We didn't see much of him last week, if anything almost. He was really flying under the radar. But Kasper Mariansky, the Polish driver in the Porsche 963, that is the, I believe, the Proton Competition. Yeah, Proton Competition liveried car. He is going to come around to set his first lap time on a new, fresh attempt. So he doesn't have a previous lap time to compare against on this particular run, but previously had put down a lap time 1.4 seconds slower than our pole sitter. Simoncic now goes up to the 2nd position. So now it's Lamborghini, BMW, Cadillac. Grigoletto is now demoted to the 3rd position, and this is very, very close with just under 2 minutes left to go in qualifying. So Marokchek, Simoncic, Grigoletto, that's your top 3. Hoyer, Tump, Levis, De Buono makes your top 7. Mark Veit, Jules Neal, and Bert Knops are your top 10. We look now at Davin Moravcik, who is still lapping around. He has just been putting down lap after lap after lap, desperately trying to eclipse his own time of a 122.745 to defend and make sure that the likes of Simoncic and Grigoletto are not able to eclipse his time in the last minute and 20 seconds. He's down on his times in Sector 1 and 2, indicated by the yellow boxes in the bottom right. Green means they've improved on their own personal best, but are not quite as fast as the ultimate lap time. Purple sector means fastest of the session, and Moravcik comes across the line, another 71 thousandths of a second lost in the third sector. You hear a little bit of a lockup maybe in the left front there. As he continues to lap around, I really don't think at this point in the tire life that he's going to be able to put down any sort of improvement. You can see the glare from the sun high up in the sky above Brazil, Sao Paulo, a beautiful part of the country, and in this case, a sunny day. No rain coming from the lakes. And just as I say that, Moravcik goes 30 thousandths faster that time in Sector 1. So that's a purple sector for him, just barely maybe gets impeded by one of the wheeling Cadillacs on the right-hand side there. He's going to try to improve. He's on a new set of tires here. That is going to certainly make things interesting. Let's see if he's able to get those warmed up. 16 seconds remaining. I don't think he'll almost certainly not make it around to make another lap. This will have to be it for him. Will Moravcik improve on his time? Right now, Simoncic and Grigoletto have not been able to improve at all. He's going to come across the sector line in just a few moments' time. Let's see what it is. Another purple sector. Moravcik out on a flyer here at the very last second. Can he finish this lap off to improve his own lap time? I really don't think anyone right now can stand up to the pace of the Lamborghini number 19. The Iron Lynx green car is going to come across the line. Let's see if he improves once again. That's another purple sector. 3 purple sectors for Davin Moravcik, and a very impressive qualifying performance from the lone Lamborghini. Very well done. We look now at Fabio Grigoletto, who is not currently on a lap. He's going to have to give up that time. Mitchie Hoyer now into the pit lane, so that's just about going to be everybody for the session. One of the Porsches going to try to go across the line. This is David Levis trying to improve on his time, but I don't think he'll have an opportunity to start that lap, so he's just going to have to bring that Porsche Penske Motorsport 963 back around to the pit lane. With that, as far as I know, I don't think there's anybody else on track who has a shot at eclipsing that time, so we'll go ahead and run you through the results in a few moments' time. This is Julian Guerin, who is improved in sectors 1 and 2. He'll make his way up to the 14th position, so a one-place improvement for the 83 AF Corsa Ferrari, the yellow liveried Ferrari 499P out on track. He's going to go ahead and pull off for us. Mark Veit coming into the pit lane himself. Amos Laredo going to try and come across the line. He's improved in each of the first 2 sectors, but not any faster in the third sector. That is going to be enough for just 6th position and maybe a little bit of damage on the left front of that number 3 Cadillac. But with that, we're going to go ahead and run you down the results. Davin Moravcik with an incredibly impressive 122.670. The Lamborghini absolutely flying on pace. Then we have Jernej Simoncic, not the pole sister for 2 weeks in a row. He's done a good job, though, of putting himself in 2nd position. Then we have Fabio Grigoletto in the 3rd position. Mitchie Hoyer will put his BMW in 4th position. Mario Tump, the first of the Porsches, scored in 5th position. Laredo will hold the 6th position. The second of the Cadillacs scored. David Levis will make 7th position. Marco De Buono, the first of the Ferraris, in 8th. Then we have Farinelli in the 9th position, that Cadillac number 2, the blue liveried Cadillac, that is. Then Jules Neal with a very respectable 10th position. Mark Veit is in the 11th position, and not too far behind is Mr. Brew in the, the 5th Cadillac in line. Lots of Cadillacs out there. Bert Knops, number 38. Porsche is in 13th position. Julian Guerin, number 83, and good enough for 14th. Then Julian Gergaud in the 15th position, number 3. Clement Gergaud. I always get those mixed up. I get them mixed up sometimes. Anyway, had those mixed in. I had Julian on the mind. Then Quidel is going to be good enough for the 16th position, and Mariinsky is going to finish out 17th in the number 99 Porsche. So a very impressive qualifying position by Davin Moravcik. Didn't just settle and rest on his laurels, but instead kept putting out good laps and was good enough to take the pole by just about 0.2 of a second.
Yeah, very, very impressive then. from Davin Rotchek, but of course Simoncic still alongside him. We can't forget Grigoletto, of course, looking to once again make a brilliant start and steal the lead under both of their noses. So it could be a really, really close sprint race in prospect. Here's the grid order. Davin Rotchek takes pole position in Hypercar from Jerne Simoncic in second. Row 2 is Fabio Grigoletto with Michi Hoyer alongside him in the second BMW. Row 3, Mario Tump in 5th with Amos Lorito. Much better qualifying for the Italian alongside him in 6th. David Levy, his first appearance, he gets the number 4 Porsche into 7th ahead of Marco Di Buono, the Italian, in the Ferrari. Row 5, Daniele Farinelli in 9th with Jules Neal alongside him in 10th, the 2 Cadillacs. Take up row 5. Row 6 is Mark Veit with Aurelien Brou, the Frenchman, right next to him. Row 7, Bert Knops will start 13th with Julian Guerin alongside in 14th. Row 8, Clement Gagod, 15th with Gaëtan Quidel, lining up alongside him in 16th in the identical number 3 Cadillac. 17th, Kakpa Mariansky makes his first appearance at the very back of the Hypercar field, but Kieran Prendergast starts on row 9 and pole position for GD3 with Matteo Blotto in second and Kamau Naui in third in class. Fourth in class, Sebastian Wunsch in the 86 Ferrari with Arda Erchan, 5th alongside him. Callum Cripps will start 6th in class with Louis Gaspar in 7th. 8th in class will be Poland's Erwin Liskowitz with Fabian Ballet, the German, in 9th. 10th on the grid, Valtteri Mannen in the Corvette with Michel Rodriguez starting in 11th. 12th on the grid, Alex Yves Rassi with Ryan Littlemore alongside in the Ferrari. On row 14 will be Cappagasio with Elise Buzita, 32nd in the overall order. Then it's Regan Mitchell and Luca Fingard who make up row 17. Finally, on row 18, bring up the rear, it's none other than Marcus Crawford. So Crawford, of course, started at the very back last time out as well, but of course was still able to get his way up to 12th. By the checkered flag, of course. So it just shows a little bit of attrition. Some clever driving can pay off then, as Davin Rotchek is about to lead the field away in a few short seconds time with Jerne Simoncic alongside in that BMW art car. And don't forget about Grigoletto right behind Rotchek as well. Those top 4, top 5 could well be swapping positions a couple of times in this race as they're about to go to green flag now. And Rotchek leads the field away at the start, and Manninen has already picked up a penalty, but Rotchek really streaking away in that Lamborghini, and it's Simoncic just having to get defensive, but Rotchek's broken very, very late into the center S, and it's all getting a little bit mixed up here as we go back to the Corvettes. This looks like the second of the Porsches, the number 5, just trying to make its way through. That must be Mark Veit then, just trying to thread his way between the Ferrari and the Corvettes, but Simoncic not quite able to take advantage of that small error from Davin Rotchek then, Braden.
Yeah, and Rotchek has already shown the pace of that car, but he's going to have to work hard to hold off Jerne Simoncic. The BMW team, WRT BMW V8 hybrid is incredibly fast. We see Kieran Prendergast now slotting into the second position behind
it's
our... yeah, that is Blotto has come out in the lead. So despite the outright pace of Kieran Prendergast, once again finds himself sitting in the second position. Same as last week. Kamau Naui looks like he's already had a big issue. So this is exactly what we talked about earlier, kind of what we would have been hoping from Arda Erchan. Hoping some issues for Kamau Naui. We'll have to find out more about what happened there. So if anybody in the chat has some further information on that, or any of our stewards have information on that, certainly please let us know. But right now it's Ferrari, McLaren, Ferrari at the top of the list for our GT3 category.
Yeah, and Luca Fingard in the BMW, sadly, after a pretty strong race at Spa, he is not going to finish the first lap either. As Prendergast really starting to get a big tow from Blotto as they go towards the center S. There's a yellow flag somewhere ahead of them on the circuit. Simoncic, oh, there we go. It's Bert Knops that spun at the center S, and the GD3 field has to thread their way around, and that really allows the top 3 to close up. Arda Erchan not quite able to get ahead, and now Bert Knops will easily breeze back through. Prendergast looking to take advantage of this, trying to go down the outside at the Reda Aposta into Desida del Lago. Blotto having to defend to slow that Ferrari right down at the apex to halt Prendergast's progress. But Prendergast, he is a man on a mission after the heartbreak of Spa, determined to take the early advantage here. He's going to try and go around the outside, uphill at Ferradura, and that creates an opportunity for the other Ferrari. Sebastian Bunch bullies his way through, and this is almost backfiring horribly for Kieran Prendergast.
Yeah, he went from being the meat in the Ferrari sandwich to now being in an intense battle with Sebastian Wunsch, the second of the Ferraris right now. And it looks like Wunsch is actually going to get the advantage here heading into turn 10. Prendergast going to shove it on the inside. gives it right back to Sebastian Wunsch, puts him on the grass even, and that's going to open up an opportunity for the Ferrari behind. Oh, and he spins out. Sebastian Wunsch goes from battling for third place. He's hard in the wall.
Oh, that's heavy, heavy damage to Wunsch's car after that brilliant podium last time out. There was just no room between either him or Arda Ercan, and Wunsch now gets going in 31st and last place behind Marcus Crawford there. But that really could not have gone much worse for Wunsch. He was looking like maybe going up to second position and ended up going off track 2 times there, essentially. But yeah, you can't really blame Arda Ercan for keeping to his line. I really think Sebastian Wunsch would have been advised to to get out of that one then. But yeah, there's Wunsch and Littlemore now visit the pits, presumably for repairs. So I'm not quite sure what happened to Ryan Littlemore, but he seems to have hit trouble early on in this race as well. Meanwhile, here's our top 3 in Hypercar. Marocek now starting to get things under control, getting the gap to over a second on Simoncic. This is impressive so far. We saw the potential that Lamborghini had in Marocek's hands in Spa, and it's really paying off here. All he needed was that pole position and a good clean start, and he's had both, Ray.
Yeah, Marocek fastest in practice, fastest in qualifying, and right now, fastest in the race. He's opening up a little bit of a lead over Jernej Simoncic, just about 1 second in the mirror. Gregoletto continuing to also fall off the back of Simoncic. So if Marocek can just be patient and not succumb to the pressure of Simoncic behind, and we know just how good Simoncic is, he is going to be smooth sailing here. He's going to have to nail the pit stops. We saw a mistake from him late in the pit stops, coming over the white line and getting a slow down penalty. So hopefully he's able to keep focus and not make a mistake like that again. And he could very well be the winner of this race. In the meantime, Fabio Gregoletto is currently under a lot of pressure from the second of the BMWs. That's Michi Hoyer trying to put pressure on the rear end of the red wheeling Cadillac. But as of right now, no opportunity to put a pass on. But once again, the meat in the sandwich, this BMW is the meat in the Cadillac sandwich right now. Red Cadillac Whelen sponsored. That's in the hands of Gregoletto. And then Larito in the number 3, not too far behind. Don't look now, but Mario Tump not too far behind that as well. As we see a pass for position. This is Regan Mitchell going over Casper Cassier. Casper Cassier is now scored in the 28th position in the number 31 Team WRT BMW. Struggling a little bit for pace are the BMW GT3s this weekend.
Yeah, and this is Regan Mitchell recovering from a very, very tough qualifying as well. And Casper Cassier in, I believe, his first appearance here, just struggling to keep up with Mitchell at this phase. So yeah, Regan Mitchell definitely qualified a little bit out of position there, and is now starting to make up some ground with all the GT3 retirements we've seen in these early phases. Littlemore, Nowie, and Fingard no longer a factor in this one, as we see a move up the inside of Gregoletto. Goes Michi Hoyer, but Hoyer's gone a little bit too deep into the center S, and he has to give that position back. Gregoletto gets through. Look at Amos Larito, who started 6th, has got past Mario Tump, and now he's going to take advantage even more, because Michi Hoyer's going to be feeling the pain of that mistake all the way down the straight of the Red Reposta into Decido del Lago. Larito, the Italian, breaks super late. He's almost got the inside, but he's not quite far enough to make the move, and he has to settle back in. So Michi Hoyer, a little bit of a brave attempt, but that's so nearly backfired on him.
Yeah, great racing so far, especially in our hypercar class, but it just goes to show that even if you try to make a move on somebody, if you don't make that move stick, you put yourself at severe risk of pressure from behind. In this case, Michi Hoyer does a great job of defending from Larito, not far behind, but now going to try to focus his sights back on the Whelen Cadillac just ahead, the number 311. Fabio Gregoletto also doing a great job on pace, trying to hold off Michi Hoyer, who we know has some great outright pace. In the meantime, Marocek continues to get further and further out the windshield, 1.6 seconds gap between him and Simoncic from first and second right now at the top of the field.
Yeah, this is really impressive from David Marocek, because we know exactly how quick Yeah, and Simicic he's a 4-time FSR world champion for a reason, and he's got lots of endurance racing experience in sim racing to boot as well. So Marocek proving that he is no slouch whatsoever, and no surprise really from the 2021 Formula Challenge champion, who of course has got his own history in the FSR World Championship with several podiums to his name. But no longer is he the support act to Simicic, now he is the main event. And meanwhile, Michi Hoyer senses his chances of victory a little bit compromised because he feels he's being held up, I think, a little bit behind Grigoletto, and it's allowing Lorito and Tump to join the party as well. Meanwhile, a little bit further back, Clement Gurgord, he's had a good start actually to get up to 9th ahead of Jules Neal, who's exactly where he started, but Neal is not letting the yellow Cadillac through without a fight, and the 311 just weaving around, and it's there, the blue, yellow and red, all Cadillac colors represented, as Farinelli is just ahead of him as well. But look at that, Gurgord gaining 6 positions from his starting spot on the grid, which really shows he had a lightning start.
Yeah, and don't look now, but Levy dropping off as well, as in the same way that Clement Gurgord has already taken up 6 positions, 5 positions lost since the start for Levy in the Porsche, and that is going to hurt, especially as this is a much shorter race. There's much less time to make up positions. Clement Gurgord going to try to hold off his pseudo teammate in the wheeling Cadillac, Jules Neal. Already it looks like some damage on the front end of that car, a little bit of a wrinkle in the squishy magic carbon fiber on the front end of that car. He's going to make a move to the inside here, going to try to outbrake him. It looks like he's done it, but is he going to go deep? The crossover going to come back from Clement Gurgord, but it looks like Jules Neal just able to defend well enough through the Senna S's. And is he going to get a good enough run down the straightaway to try to hold on to this position? It looks like he has done so, so give one more position to Jules Neal in the number 311 Wheeling Cadillac Racing.
Yeah, fantastic move from Neal. Had to spot the breaking point perfectly, but it just there was just enough space there to make that move, and Neal into 9th position once more. But look at this. This is Callum Cripps trying to get into the top 5, I believe, in class in GT3, and that's Louis Gaspard, of course, who retired early on in Spa, but now he is really starting to present a bit of a roadblock for Callum Cripps, who's got Erwin Liskovitz in the rearview mirror as well. So Liskovitz, also another driver that didn't finish in Spa, looking to get a good result here. So Callum Cripps, I think, is a little bit faster than Louis Gaspard, but it's getting that McLaren past the Ferrari that's proving to be a bit of a headache right now, unless he can just get up the inside into the center S, which is exactly what he does. It's going to be really, really physical on exit here through the second part of the corner. Louis Gaspard trying to push Callum Cripps out, and look at this, Liskovitz is going to get involved too, up the inside through Curva del Sol, and Liskovitz follows him through. So that puts Louis Gaspard down 2 positions then.
Yeah, this goes to show the point we made earlier about how important it is to make a move and stick with it. And in the same way, when you lose a position, you open yourself up. Liskovitz going to try to make up 2 positions in 1 lap. Is he going to be able to do it? He's now on the outside, the non-preferred lane. But can he carry the speed on the outside of the number 59 McLaren? Looks like he might just not be able to. The McLaren very loose on the inside. Big time slide for Callum Cripps on the inside of Erwin Liskovitz. He's going to try to hold on to it. He's going to hold on to the position, but now Liskovitz going to have to look in the mirror, as now things are just about to get even more interesting. Add into the element of the leaders coming through. We look now at Mario Tump, currently scored in the 6th position. He's putting pressure on Amos Laredo, not too far ahead. He has been very fast, both last week at Spa and now this week. We'll see how he does in terms of pit strategy. It was pit strategy that really gave him track position 1 week ago. We'll see if he's able to make some of that magic happen to try to get yet another podium here at Interlagos.
You see Davin Rocek taking some of the pain of being the first to come up on the GT3 traffic. The gap has gone from almost 2 seconds down to just 1 second then. So Simicic taking risks to keep Rocek in sight then. But meanwhile, we see this battle on screen at the moment with Laurito and Tump juking away, and you can even see Di Buono in the red Ferrari, keeping them very, very honest indeed. Ahead of Laurito is Grigoletto and Hoyer, who are still drilling away. The gap between Hoyer and Simicic now 2.8 seconds. So Michi Hoyer crucially has been able to clear Grigoletto just before they hit this traffic.
Yeah, and the traffic, once again, going to be a massive key to the race. Amos Laredo, we're taking a look at now, trying to put some pressure on the car ahead while still not letting anything out for Mario Tump as they head to the right-hand side of one of the that's one of the Corvettes that they've just gone past. So a bit of a slide move there. The Corvette's going to be stuck on the outside, but Amos Laredo going to really set up the apex here. Maybe even misses it a little bit. Ferrari now the rolling blockade for Michi Hoyer up ahead. Michi Hoyer going to have to defend now from the number 311 Grigoletto. Going to try to use that opportunity, the pick set by the GT3s, and meanwhile we have GT3 side by side ahead. I believe that is one of the Ferraris and one of the that's one of the Ferraris. One of the it is so that's the battle we were just looking at. That is going side by side, but it looks like they're just going to get him at the right spot and get him down the kind of curved straightaway. I think they'll all just about get past as we see Marco De Buono, the last of that group, to slide on through, at least this time around. So it looks like they'll all get clear before heading back into the Senna S's.
Yeah, there we go.
Side by side for position now. It looks like Laredo making a move to the inside of
Grigoletto.
Yeah, Grigoletto has just lost a position. So Grigoletto down to 5th position. Amos Laredo going to make his way up to 4th. And now he's going to try to take a shot at Michi Hoyer in the BMW.
Yeah, and I think that's Fabian Ballet just being lapped there as well. There's now trying to lap the GT3 podium. But yes, Grigoletto, it's unfortunately for him, a similar story to Spa, isn't it? Really strong start and then falling down the order back to 5th. But Amos Laredo having a much better run. We saw him rule that with the wheel failure. He just comes upon, is that the number 95 at exactly the wrong moment there through Ferradura, and that backs him into Grigoletto once more and allows Michi Hoyer to just escape and a second up the road from him now.
And that's actually our leader. That's Matteo Blotto in the number 86 Ferrari that they've just passed, or actually that they're just about to pass. So that's the second of them. It's one of the other 86. Who's in the other 86?
It would be Erchan, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I believe. No, Erchan, I believe, is in the 46. So not sure exactly who that is, but wow, look at the traffic coming through turn 10. No space between them, no opportunities for a breath for any of these cars. You see the 99 Porsche now tagging onto this group we're looking at here, another of the number 3 yellow, gold, whatever you'd like to call it, Cadillac. So we're looking now, Erwin Liskowitz continuing to do battle with Callum Cripps. Neither of them able to really get away from one another. They're certainly going to be tired of each other at the end of the next 45 minutes. So 15 minutes already down out of this hour, and you can see just how rapidly this goes by. But in the meantime, if you take a look at the left-hand side of your screen, Simičić is starting to make up time on Devin Moravcik. That gap had gone up as high as 2.5 or so seconds, now down under 2 seconds.
Yeah, I think the big battle is really going to be Hoyer versus Laredo for the final spot on the podium then, but yeah, Liskowitz not quite able to take advantage of all this hypercars blasting past them to snatch 5th in class away from Callum Cripps. So Cripps has managed this beautifully so far to climb a few positions up the order. Of course, Fabian Ballet 2.6 seconds up the road, and he's actually not too far away from Arda Erchan as the gap's starting to just spread out ever so slightly. It's really Mannin and Gaspar that's the closest duel, in Liskowitz and Cripps, the battle for 5th, the second closest fight as well. So Louis Gaspar, after losing those positions earlier, has now got the Corvette of Manninen to deal with. And Manninen, after getting a top 10 finish last time out, he's looking to do even better this time as he closes in on 7th position.
Yeah, and Manninen really starting to put the pressure on the Ferraris and McLarens that have enjoyed some almost seemingly unlimited free air to battle one another at the front of the field, but the Corvette going to try to spoil that party and put a third different manufacturer in play. In the meantime, something interesting of note is that Andrea Tolari in the chat is telling us that Amos Laredo still has the same wheel problem, so hopefully we'll not see a retirement from him, but still with some pretty incredible racing out here. This is Fabio Grigoletto now going to lose another position to Mario Tump. So once again, we're seeing kind of a repeat of what we saw in Spa, where Grigoletto has some great pace to start with, but over the run, maybe starts to lose grip out of those tires and slowly falls back. Mario Tump going to have to be careful as he attacks to make sure that Marco De Bono doesn't make any sort of opportunist move to take that 6th position, and in fact Mario Tump is now going to have to go full defense and try not to give up any more time to the Ferrari AF Corsa just behind.
Yeah, you definitely get the feeling that Grigoletto, excellent qualifier, qualified in the top 3 behind only Moravcik and Simičić, but come the races, that's where some of the weaknesses are a little bit exposed on that Cadillac there. So Grigoletto, of course, will be learning as he goes across the season, as will all these drivers in Le Mans Ultimate. It's a relatively new game, of course, and these hypercars, they do take a little bit of tuning and a little bit of practice to get the absolute best out of them, unless you're an absolutely top driver like Jenny Simoncic or David Morocek, in which case you can sort of just jump in and go, it feels like sometimes. But yeah, I think Simoncic was just, I was listening to Jenny's stream after Spa, and he was just saying, oh, I did about like 30 minutes in the car beforehand. I'm surprised I won that one, but he was surprised at how relatively straightforward the race was ultimately once the strategies played out. But of course, so far he's not really had things his own way. Of course, big gap to Hoyer at the moment, 5.5 seconds. But yeah, Morocek, once they deal with the traffic, Morocek just starts to stretch his legs ever so slightly. The gap almost at 2 seconds once again. So Simoncic is not really been able to formulate much of a response so far in that BMW. The Lamborghini is the car to be in the hands of David Morocek at the present moment. But meanwhile, Mario Tump still all over the back of Fabio Grigoletto, and Grigoletto under real pressure here to hold on to that 5th place in class.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be interesting to see as we rapidly approach about 40 minutes remaining in the race when some of these drivers start coming in. I think we may see some split strategy. Some drivers try to flip things by pitting early and just utilizing the full fuel tank for a final stint of 40 minutes, whereas others will try to get all the way down to the last 20, 25 minutes or so of the race and then do a sort of splash and dash to finish this race off. We look now to Louis Gaspar in the number 155 Spirit of Race Ferrari. He's trying to hold off Valtteri Männinen, who has been doing a fantastic job of climbing his way up the order. So the Corvettes, despite not having great qualifying pace, the race pace seems really great for that Corvette GT3, and goes to show from those in the chat who mentioned it, the Corvette is very good around this Interlagos circuit, and Valtteri Männinen certainly showing off the speed of that GM product.
Well, Valtteri Männinen again doing exactly what he did Spa, which is just generally stay out of trouble and have a good clean race. Buzita as well, working his way into the top 10 from I think 16th on the grid as well. There were a lot of, we saw the likes of Rassi, Wunsch, a little more now, I think I'd all hit trouble then, and Wunsch is one of those drivers that's had to pit early, so I'm interested to see with him on a different strategy whether he can undercut his way further up the GT3 field once the others make their pit stop. But Männinen, closer than he's looked in a while, trying to weave his way in to that 7th position as they go into the center S. Gaspar is going to be on the outside here. Oh, they just about wrestle for control. Gaspar over the curb, just avoids hitting the Corvette, and it's Männinen that's up to P7, and Gaspar is falling into the clutches of Regan Mitchell now, who we saw was on a charge from the back of the field. Now that Ferrari is surely going to be next to get gobbled up by Mitchell's McLaren.
Yeah, and the looking at the greater context of the championship, as we see Regan Mitchell going to try to go to the outside. The McLaren's on the inside now, but it'll be the outside as they head through the double right-hand complex here. Will he be able to hold the speed in the 95 McLaren to the outside? Will the downforce hold him in? Not quite. So Louis Gaspar going to hold the position, at least for the time being. Will he make a move to the inside here? Looks like he'll just fall in line. But talking about the greater context of the championship, we see the likes of Kamal Nawi, who won last week, now DNF'd and scored in the 17th position. But you have people like Mattia Blotto and Arda Erchan, who were very, very fast, but hit troubles 1 week ago, and so are much further down the order in the championship. So right now it's looking like we could almost see a meeting in the middle of these people. The one kind of wrench in that is Kieran Prendergast, currently scored in the 2nd position. If he can go second in the first 2 races, or even go ahead and take that win from Blotto potentially, this is certainly far from over. This could be an opportunity for Prendergast to actually get a little bit of an advantage in the overall championship.
And look at this, Braden. Look at Amos Lorito's Cadillac. It seems whenever it gets up to speed, it starts as puffs of smoke. And that tells me that engine in that Cadillac is starting to run really, really hot behind Michi Hoyer in that dirty air. And Amos could well be in some trouble here.
Yeah, despite even having wheel issues, now looking like car issues for the number 3 Cadillac Racing.
That clean V8, air, isn't he?
Yeah, the V8 very much not happy. Potentially some damage from rear-ending someone earlier on, but Michi Hoyer is certainly going to be excited to see a big plume of smoke that's not his own from behind. So Amos Lorito going to have to be careful and baby that Cadillac around the circuit for another 40 minutes or so. We'll have to see and keep appraised on whether or not he's able to nurse that car back home.
Yeah, not only Amos Lorito fighting with a disobedient steering wheel, but now he's got an overheating engine to contend with as well. So this is really, really tough because he would like nothing more than just to focus on attacking Michi Hoyer. But at the moment, he's got so many other things to manage at the right now that he can't devote his attention to that. Meanwhile, David Levy is having a really strong stint in this race because he's all over the back of Daniele Farinelli in the blue Cadillac. And Farinelli starting to feel pressure to stay in the top 10 here. So we see another Cadillac starting to overheat in between them as well. That's Clement Gagord, who's having the exact same issue as Lorito.
Yeah, it makes me wonder whether that's some sort of a setup issue, maybe something to do with the Cadillacs themselves. Interestingly enough, we've only seen it from the number 3 Cadillacs. I'm not sure if that's simply a coincidence or perhaps driving style that's an issue. But talking again about David Levy, we actually, is that smoke now coming out of Farinelli's car? So Farinelli now billowing smoke in front of the number 4 Porsche Penske Motorsport. Yellow flag is out right now. Not sure exactly what that is for, but it looks like Farinelli going to be under pressure from David Levy. David Levy trying to make up positions from those he's lost since the start of the race, and it looks like he's going to make that move work going into the Senna S's. Very clean move there from David Levy, getting a little bit less of a smoke screen out in front of him, but he's still in a sandwich plume of smoke. He's got his eyes set now on the next of the Cadillacs driven by the Frenchman.
Yeah, there we go. So Farinelli dispensed with, but David Levy can barely see where he's going with all these overheating engines just throwing smoke at him in a desperate attempt to sort of blind him through these corners. So far, it's not quite working out at the moment, and I think we are going to have to see these Cadillacs doing the Amos Lorito method of just pulling out of the dirty air and just trying to cool that engine down in some clear air. But there's precious little bit about here at Interlagos. And yeah, you see with so long still left to go in this race, we're only 20 minutes in, it is really a worrying sign for all these Cadillacs, and it could well be that not all of them get to the end here at this rate. I think we are going to see reliability being a big factor now.
Yeah, we're not even quite halfway, and these could be opportunities for them to maybe pit early, get some clean air. Even if you're all the way behind the rest of the field, there is an opportunity there where you have a little bit more clean air. So we see side by side now, Fabio Grigoletto continuing to fall down the order. Marco De Bono in the Ferrari is going to take that position down the straightaway. Grigoletto, I think, just going to give that up. No, it looks like he's going to try to fight back on the inside, maybe a little bit wide for Marco De Bono through the Bruno Senna S's. But just on top of each other here, the Whelen Cadillac going to have to be careful not to deal with any overheating issues as you see the plume of smoke from another of the Cadillacs ahead, and it looks like Fabio Grigoletto not going to be able to get that position back. But moving back to the topic where I could potentially see one of these Cadillacs that's overheating coming in a little bit early, get some clean air, don't be around the rest of your class, at least not quite as much, and by the time you come out with enough fuel to make it to the end, you will have cooled off that engine at just about halfway through the race. Maybe this is a situation where you have to just give that engine a little bit of rest and an opportunity to cool down and not be tucked in behind your racing competitors, as we see David Levy trying to put more pressure on Clement Gagord and get past that smoking Cadillac.
Yeah, Gagord isn't slowing down, and now he's got some GT3 traffic to contend with once again. So this is a bit of a nightmare scenario for the Frenchman because David Levy's all over that rear wing and looking to take advantage of any slip-ups here. But from David Levy's perspective, push him until he breaks, essentially, is the strategy right now. And Clement Gagord, the engine is starting to fray at the seams, isn't it? You can see it visibly looking worse and worse each lap. And that really shows the job that the other Cadillacs have done in the form of Jules Neal and Grigoletto. Even though they've a little bit further down the Hypercar field, they have actually kept the temperatures under control and done a successful job in managing that. And I think it looks like Lorito is smoking a little bit less as well as we cut back to the Liskovitz-Cripps battle. And Urban Liskovitz doing a really, really good job to keep pace with Callum Cripps for 5th. But it looks like Ballet is still about 5 seconds at the race. So Ballet has disappeared essentially, and this is really a solo fight for 5th. So we see the Porsche lapping both of them, almost going off track to do it then. So nobody wants to deal with these GT3s in the infield because that's when you lose time, isn't it?
Yeah, and just addressing a question in the YouTube chat as we see, very close moment there. Marco De Bono just shouldering his way in between that battle for the 5th position. 5th and 6th positions in the GT3 category, and it looks like he's actually going to get a little bit of space between himself, maybe, and Grigoletto behind, and it looks like Jules Neal now is making his way up to challenge Grigoletto, who's been just dropping like he's dropped an anchor out the back of that wheeling Cadillac. But back to the question in the chat, somebody asked, what is the advantage to running tape on these race cars? And I find this as an interesting opportunity to bring up the fact that I am actually an aerodynamicist for a living. I work for the Ford Motor Company on production and race cars, and so to give a more technical description of why that is because when you put tape on the front end of the car, it not only reduces drag because you have less air being ingested into the vehicle, but it also, in some cases, depending on the location of the tape, can improve downforce. So a great example of that is with the NASCAR stock cars. If you put tape on the front end of that car, it not only can decrease your drag, but it also can increase your downforce by changing the way in which the air is interacting with the front end of the car. And that may very well be the case with these Cadillacs, trying to make the most of the front end downforce and the front end grip that you could get out of the Michelin tires in the hypercar class.
And what you especially notice with prototypes, and it's true with Formula One cars as well, is that when they're standing still for, like, say, a pit stop or something, they're more likely to overheat because they're aerodynamically designed to channel the air through to the radiators and cool down the engine essentially when they're at speed. So in these slower speed corners, actually, they're technically a little bit more at risk of overheating when stuck behind someone as well. So yeah, that is something to keep in mind. But certainly, big snap there for Fabio Grigoletto, and Jules Neal is going to take advantage of that into Jun Chao through into 7th position there. So one mistake, that was all Jules Neal needed, and Grigoletto sees him just falling down the order here as they go around the outside of Kieran Prendergast, who is still trying to snatch that GT3 class lead. And look at it, they're still about to go side by side, the two Cadillacs. Grigoletto is going to try and get the inside here. Jules Neal on the outside, and Grigoletto back through. Fantastic recovery there from the Italian. Not going to be intimidated out of the way there, but Jules Neal is going to be shadowing him all the way down to Reposta. Fantastic fight, Neal. Neal?
Yeah, and for those for those trying to identify Jules Neal, you can just see a little bit of damage on the front end of that Cadillac as they come by. So although they do have two different liveries, you can kind of tell them apart just by which has a little bit of a crinkle on the nose there. So that's Jules Neal, the Frenchman, young Frenchman, trying to make a move on the much more experienced Fabio Grigoletto. Identical liveries, but still very much battling one another. Meanwhile, we move up to the battle between Mario Tump and Amos Laredo. Amos Laredo seems to have been able to mitigate the overheating of that car. He's fallen off the back of Michi Hoyer, who he had been tucked up right behind previously. Perhaps some more air getting to the front end of that Cadillac and through the radiators to cool that V8 engine, the pure American engine in the back end of that hypercar. But now he's at risk. And look, big time moment. Who's that that's just gone around? Orlin Brew now is under. Mark Veit's gone off the track. And in the meantime, Kasper Mariansky trying to make a move around Orlin Brew. So this is Mark Veit, who looks like he's going to have to retire. He's pulling off to the side of the track as we see another smoking Cadillac just behind. This is Gaten Quidel, who is smoking just behind the Proton Competition number 99 Porsche. It looks like we've lost Mark Veit now.
Oh, that is a big shame from the driver that, of course, finished in the top 7 in class, was one of the front runners at Spa. He didn't have a good qualifying here, did he? And he's just been mired in the pack with the Cadillacs and the other Porsches and some of the Ferraris too. But yeah, the overheating Cadillacs of Farinelli and Quidel have sort of had to slow down their pace, and that's sort of what's caused this bit of a concertina effect behind. Mark Veit, I think, being caught out and spun in the infield section. But meanwhile, the GT3s, they haven't lessened their battle whatsoever. Erwin Liskowitz really wants to take that 5th place in class. He's waited extremely patiently. The front of that car has gotten a little bit close, I think, because it looks a little bit buckled and bruised from maybe getting a little bit close to the back of the McLaren. But Callum Cripps has not really put a foot wrong, has driven a superb defensive race so far, and he's halfway through it, only 30 more minutes to go. So he just has to keep Liskowitz behind until the checkered flag, and through that pit stop as well. Liskowitz might decide to try and undercut to get through into 5th in class here. So Callum Cripps has got to be wary he doesn't leave himself too exposed here.
Yeah, and don't look now, but Davin Marokchek has opened up a 3.2-second lead over Jerne Simoncic and Michi Hoyer. Another 5 seconds, almost 6 seconds back from that. Laredo has fallen off the back of Michi Hoyer, as we mentioned previously, but right now it's Davin Marokchek's race to lose, really. He just has to survive this pit stop and continue the pace that he's been putting on, but that Lamborghini Iron Lynx LMDH has just been fantastic so far. Actually, I believe that is Hypercar spec, if I'm not wrong, as we now ride on board with Kieran Prendergast, continuing to put pressure now on Matteo Blotto. He's slowly caught back up, so Blotto going to have to put on some defensive driving to try to keep that Inception McLaren behind.
Yeah, and you can see Matteo Blotto has learned from the mistakes that really cost him a chance to finish on the podium at Spa that took him out that race so early on. This time he is really taken the lead, started to control the race and driven a very, very sensible, clean race. As we see Fabian Ballet and Liskovitz are the first of our front runners to pit then. So Liskovitz, as I suggested, is halfway through the race deciding to try and undercut Callum Cripps, and Fabian Ballet, I think, trying to cover off a potential undercut from any of those behind then. So interesting strategy. We'll have to see if those staying out on the lower fuel can set faster lap times than overcut to stay ahead then. But certainly on the fresh tyres, they could be a big, big threat here as Prendergast so near yet so far from victory once again, isn't he? Will be so conscious not to put himself in a position where he's risky on fuel this time around. But at the same time, if he could undercut to get past Blotto and get track position, that would be a huge advantage for him at this phase.
Yeah, and cast your mind back to a week ago when heartbreak struck for Kieran Prendergast after just unfortunate timing of the lapping around of our hypercar leaders just led to him having to do one additional lap than he was anticipating, running out of fuel and just barely not making it to the start-finish line. That handed the win to Kamal Nawi in the Ferrari. So these drivers are going to have that in the back of their mind, kind of a tickle in the back of their head to make sure you maybe just put a little bit extra fuel in there. It could just about save your butt, but the benefit to trying to undercut that to keep as little fuel in the car is that it is lighter, it's going to be faster on the straightaways, easier to throw around in the corners, so the risk versus reward is something that's going to be weighing heavily on these drivers' minds.
There we go. Americans can pull off that saying but in a more convincing style than I can. But so well done there, Braden. But anyway, Regan Mitchell here continuing his pursuit of trying to get into the top 6 here. And it's two drivers that have had very good races from where they started, as Gaspar enters the pit lane as well to try and respond to the stops of Ballet, and Liskovitz is all but not just appearing from nowhere to split up this battle temporarily there, and Regan Mitchell just got out the way in time there. But you sense he's that little bit faster than Manninen at this phase of the race. The McLaren working well around here in the hands of Prendergast, Cripps, and Mitchell.
Yeah, now we look at the battle between two of the Cadillacs. This is Daniele Farinelli, currently 0.3 of a second, almost 0.4 of a second ahead of Arlene Brew in the number 3 gold Cadillac. They're a little bit off of the next car up the road, and it looks like it's actually the Ferrari now that's overheating. Very hot conditions here at Interlagos. It looks like a little bit of a lock-up in the left front for Arlene Brew, not able to make anything of it, and actually, no, it is, in fact, one of the Cadillacs ahead. It is Clement Grigod, who has been just ahead of Julian Guerin for quite some time now, who's dropping that very effective smoke screen behind the Cadillac, going to try to limp that home as we now rapidly approach and now just past 25 minutes remaining in the race. So these drivers are going to have to keep moving. They're going to have to start thinking about when they're going to come into the pit lane. None of our contenders in the Hypercar class have yet come down pit lane, but we have started to see some moves made by our GT3s.
Yeah, it looks like Quidel and Gagord are the two Cadillacs that are smoking the most in terms of engine temperatures. So I would put it to you that Gagord has not really been limping whatsoever. He's been pushing, and I think the engine has gotten worse and worse as this race has gone on. So I'd be amazed if those two make it to the end the way they're driving at the moment, because the engine is not enjoying this whatsoever right now. And yeah, certainly the rest of the Cadillac run is probably grateful that their temperatures are a little bit less critical at the present moment. And yeah, it's not an issue, as I said, that's going to go away once they pit, because the temperatures don't really have a whole lot of time to decrease as Farinelli leaves the door just open. Aurelian Brew, really opportunist, cuts to the inside to try and get up to 12th position there as they cross the start-finish line. 24 minutes to go in the race, and are these hypercars going to try and save fuel to the end, or are they going to decide to cut their losses and go into the pits like we've seen the GT3 field do?
And considering how hard these hypercars are running right now, you have to imagine they're not going to make it all the way to the end, as we see now a battle between who I believe is Mario Tump. Yeah, that's Mario Tump trying to continue to put pressure on Amos Laredo. We've seen some real consistency out of Mario Tump and just slowly working his way up the field. So very impressive performance from Tump after a podium finish 1 week ago at Spa, now putting the pressure onto Laredo and forcing him to maybe push the car a little bit harder than he wants to, considering the overheating issue. He was the first car that we identified with that issue. So right now, that Cadillac is going to be trying to find a fine balance between pushing hard enough to stay ahead of that Porsche Penske Motorsport number 6 and not overheating the car.
Yeah, and we should give a shout out as well to Marco Di Buono having a much more convincing run in that Ferrari than we saw at Spa, where I think he was basically in the lower reaches of the top 10 the entire race. We're now seeing him in sixth position and keeping Tump and Laurito very, very honest indeed. But yeah, Amos Laurito, he's not. Now he's got the engine temps under control. He's just got that pesky steering wheel that's not doing exactly what he wants it to do. And you see the gap to Hoyer has ballooned out to 7.5 seconds. Then, so Mario Tump will be very, very keen to get through as quickly as possible. As Manninen sees Regan Mitchell has got not gotten through just quite yet, but Manninen will be really feeling the pressure once these hypercars get through, and there's nothing to block Mitchell's progress here. But these two keeping it out really, really long in this stint, and with the hypercars lapping them, that's not going to hold them up too much, but it'd be interesting to see the lap times relative to those who have pit, of course. None of the hypercars have opted for the pit lane just yet, but the moment they do, it will get interesting. Simičić has actually started to up his pace. He's starting to catch Marokček. So the hypercars, if they are having their pit stops, they're leaving it late. Simičić is the only one I think who could potentially have been saving virtual energy and fuel by not pushing all that much up until this point in the race.
Yeah, and I think almost all, if not all of these hypercars will have to make a stop, and it's going to have to come soon, because normally we expect about 40 minutes per stint for these cars, and we're rapidly approaching 20 of the 60 minutes on the clock today. So these drivers are going to have to expect to be in the pit lane in the next 1, 2, 3 laps or so. They're going to have to really be saving, really have those fuzzy pink slippers on if they want to draw out that fuel tank and that virtual energy as much as possible. And right now, Marokček's been putting down a pace that would seem to indicate he has done no such saving, although Simičić may indeed have been saving a small bit. He's now made up around about half a second on Marokček, and this could be a bit of a strategy to close the gap just before getting into the pit lane.
Yeah, Regan Mitchell also pits in the GT3 class, so he is deciding to cut his losses there. But yeah, Simičić has he outfoxed them all on the fuel strategy once again. Last 2 laps ago, he was half a second faster than Marokček. The lap after the previous lap he's just done, he was 9/10 quicker. The gap, 2.2 seconds. Marokček has to clear some more GT3 traffic in the form of Kieran Prendergast, who's still just half a second behind Matteo Blotto, who's soaking up the pressure wonderfully like a sponge at the moment, but Prendergast absolutely relentless, refusing to give up at this phase.
Yeah, and this is our leaders lapping our leaders. So this is our overall leaders lapping Matteo Blotto. We're riding on board on the front splitter of that number 86 GR Racing Ferrari as he comes around for another lap. He will not elect to go into the pit lane this time around, nor too will Kieran Prendergast, who now has closed that gap to under half a second. He is not allowing Matteo Blotto to have even a moment of rest, a moment of reprieve. He is continuing to pile on the pressure, and Matteo Blotto, as you mentioned, doing a wonderful job of soaking up the pressure, and so too is Marokček as he puts out a blazing couple of sectors and now has opened that gap back up to about 3 seconds.
Yeah, I think some of the traffic playing its part there as Prendergast gets well over the curb at Decido de Largo, almost sent flying there as you see Michi Hoyer now dispensing with the pair of them into Ferradura. But yeah, you could forgive Prendergast for thinking, right, let's play it safe here, pit a bit earlier, try and undercut Matteo Blotto, and so we don't run out of fuel. But no, he is running that fuel tank down to the wire to try and keep pace with Matteo Blotto. And into the pits now comes Kakpa Mariansky in the Proton competition portion, number 99. So he is getting his stop out of the way. So that's the first, I think, of our hypercars. In fact, he's coming in to retire. So that's not actually a fuel stop. He's clearly had a much bigger issue there, which is a shame for Mariansky. He was having a solid race up to that point.
Yeah, and you got to have to kind of give a hand to Sebastian Wunsch, who despite starting out in the podium spots and having a really big shunt with, I think it was Kieran Prendergast that he had a really big shunt with.
It was
and ended up getting damage. It was, oh no, you're right. Yeah, it was Arda Erchain. He had a really big shunt with and ended up doing damage to that car, but he is still out on track right now in the 31st position, but still closing the gap to the next car ahead, who I'm not sure exactly who it is, but just about under a second he's brought that gap to. So Sebastian Wunsch continuing to put the pressure on for those ahead. I think Marcus Crawford is the next car up the road in the number 46 Team WRT BMW. So yeah, this is the battle for Sebastian Wunsch trying to make up time after a rather disappointing start to the day.
Yeah, and yeah, it's good for Marcus Crawford too, because we don't see a whole lot of him on the stream. Usually, he's now got a top driver he can battle against. Wunsch turning his headlights on and almost showing his intentions, telegraphing them well in advance into Descida del Lago. Crawford has left a big gap on the inside for Sebastian Wunsch to slot that Ferrari through. We also see a very, very close battle in Hypercar between Lorito, Tump, and De Bruyne. Around the outside goes Sebastian Wunsch, and there's these overheating Cadillacs desperately trying to make their way through. As you see, that's Julian Gurin and Clement Gagard almost hitting the side of Marcus Crawford, and now they've got to deal with Wunsch as well. This is not ideal for Julian Gurin because he's got two very fast yellow cars, and he's got to manage those engine temps as well and get through as quickly as possible. So this is such a tense moment for the Frenchman here, and he's got his fellow countrymen all over the back of him.
Yeah, Julian Gurin and Clement Gagard currently doing battle in each of the two yellow cars. The Cadillac Racing car ahead of the A, of course, of Ferrari, and actually sandwiched by two identical Cadillacs. That's certainly not going to be a comfortable feeling, especially when you have a smoke screen just ahead of you, smoke and sparks coming out of the back of Clement Gagard's number 3 Cadillac Racing.
Yep, and time's starting to run out in this race. 16 minutes left on the clock then, and it looks to me like all the hypercars are going to try and stretch the fuel tank to the flag, unless we're looking at a lot of splash and dashes in the next couple of minutes, Braden. But yeah, Davin Rockchek the lead, 2.2 seconds, and look at Lorito trying to keep Mario Tump at bay. Tump has been just there constantly looking for an opening here, and Amos Lorito is having to drive out of his skin to keep that Cadillac in 4th position. He's driven a really, really strong race considering everything that Amos Lorito's been up against so far, but Mario Tump has not given up yet, and in these last 16 minutes is going to throw the kitchen sink and everything else in the house at getting that 4th position.
Yeah, relentless attack from Mario Tump at the Porsche Penske Motorsport number 6. Going to try to climb his way up into the 4th position and potentially even set his sights higher up the order. But Michi Hoyer has really put quite the gap on Amos Lorito and Mario Tump at the top of the order in the Hypercar class. But it seems that, at least for the moment, Amos Lorito can take a little bit of a breath. He's got the Tump in the slipstream, but not close enough to make a move into turn 1, although it looks like he may just show the front end of that Porsche just to remind Amos Lorito that he is still there. And it looks like a little bit of a mistake there from Amos Lorito. He misses the apex just a touch. Mario Tump, a much cleaner line. Let's see if he gets a run down the straightaway here, a short straightaway heading into the double left-hand corners, and it looks like he's just tucked up underneath the rear wing of that Cadillac. He's going to be forced to go to the outside. Amos Lorito will defend the inside. This is going to almost compromise his exit a small bit, but still able to hold the position, at least for the time being.
Yeah, you see Lorito is desperately trying to back Tump into De Bruyne behind him, just to give him a bit of trouble from behind as well. You also saw, when we looked at the duty-free order, that it's actually Liskowitz that's been the big... sort of jump the likes of Regan Mitchell then, as we now go back to live coverage. Mario Tump still very much being backed up by not just Amos Lorito, but now GD3 traffic getting in the way, as well as Lorito ducks out at the last minute to try and clear the McLaren and the Ferrari blocking his path here. And now De Bruyne is all over the back of Mario Tump looking for an opportunity. Can the Scarlet Red Ferrari make his way into the top 5 here? This would be a brilliant result if De Bruyne can pull this one off, and Tump is going to get defensive here into the center S.
Yeah, De Bruyne going to try to be the spoiler in this party between Tump and Lorito just ahead. Tump just has to defend a small bit where you can hear the energy deployment, and now the singing V8 of Amos Lorito, who is going to be so pleased to have a bit of reprieve from the relentless attack of Mario Tump, as he has to now defend from De Bruyne just behind. So Ferrari now putting pressure on the Penske Porsche, which is now putting pressure on the Cadillac. This three-way battle, no real gap between them, as we still expect the splash and dash from these cars. I'll certainly be surprised if they're able to make it all the way.
Yeah, they might be able to do something very, very clever with the virtual energy that they have at their disposal. With, of course, that energy system that they have in these hypercars, particularly the way they deploy it, and it might leave them with a little bit less engine power through certain parts of the circuit, but they might be able to use it strategically to attack and other cars and to defend position from those behind. But yeah, Morocchek and Simičić trading lap times here and there. Occasionally Simičić will catch, but then Morocchek will manage the gap and pull out a little bit further. You see the Rito now sort of through the management phase. He's now starting to pull away from Mario Tump as De Buono is causing a real problem. And it's that Grigoletto and Neil that are rejoining the battle, and they're dragging David Levy with them. So we've got an almighty 5-car scrap here for 5th in class.
Yeah, don't look now, but Jules Neal and Fabio Grigoletto are continuing to put down some pretty blistering pace compared to the cars ahead. It looks like the battle between Mario Tump and Rito really pulled in the rest of these cars. De Buono putting pressure on Tump now allows the Cadillacs to start catching up. Jules Neal has not since been able. Oh, contact there! Looks like one of the GT3s has just been put onto the grass. I think that was one of the number 59 McLarens that was just shoved out of the way by Fabio Grigoletto, who maybe just didn't quite see him there or thought that he had cleared him already, but certainly a bit of an error there. That is Fabian Bale, who has just been basically shoved out of the way by the Hypercar. Fortunately, it doesn't look like too much, if any, damage done to the number 95, but that is certainly going to be something that the stewards want to look at, and Grigoletto going to have to be very, very careful not to do any more damage if anything has been done to that Whelen Cadillac.
Now we're looking at a 6-car scrap because Amos Lorito has fallen right back into the clutches of Mario Tump then. So any little slip-ups and all sorts of things can go wrong. Well, the Corvettes has come to a screeching halt there in the background. Not quite sure which one that is, whether it's Maninen or Elise Buzita then. As we see, it is Elise Buzita then. So that's a big shame. 2 retirements in a row for the Canadian, but nonetheless this battle continues on as De Buono super late on the brakes and Tump almost with nowhere to go as he gets on the power so much earlier than Amos Lorito. I wonder is Lorito just really having to manage his fuel then for these last 11 minutes?
Yeah, he could just be trying to park it on the apexes. Now we have another McLaren, an innocent McLaren, trying to stay out of the way and not get run over by these raging hypercars in the middle of a battle. But it looks like they'll, at least the first 3 will get through cleanly. Mario Tump gonna have to be careful about how and when he makes his moves on Amos Lorito, because if he makes a move and doesn't quite complete it, he will very quickly be in the clutches of Marco De Bono and the Ferrari behind. Not close enough to make any sort of a move on Lorito, at least not through this set of corners, but this battle continues to go on, and in the meantime, Kieran Prendergast continuing to put pressure on Matteo Blotto at the top of the LMGT3 order, under half a second the gap there, and 4 or 5 cars under a blanket here for what is 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th, all in a line here in the hypercar category.
Keep in mind, in GT3, none of the top 6 have come in for pit stops. So Liskevitz, Ballet, Gaspar, and we saw Ballet being barged out of the way by the hypercars. He's really lost out in this sort of strategy phase. But we know all those GT3s are going to be so low on fuel in these final few laps. It could well even come down to whether Davin Rockcheck or whoever in Hypercars is leading laps them on the final lap or not. As we see, a little bit wide, and that's going to compromise Amos Lorito's exit here. Mario Tump all over him like a cheap suit at the moment and desperate looking for a way through, but Amos Lorito is back on the throttle and using the straight line speed that Cadillac to good effect here. Mario Tump really has to be careful how he manages this here because De Buono is all over the back of him in turn as well, and De Buono is the one with the grandstand seat, but he of course has got 4 very, very hungry Cadillacs all behind him as well, looking to take advantage instead too. So Mario Tump is just sort of boxed in here, and look here, late dive from Marco De Buono into the S's, and now into Pinherino. He's going to try and go around the outside. Grigoletto is tucked up behind as well. They catch wheels, and they're both off. Mario Tump and Marco De Buono lose several positions there, and that's the problem with the pack being so bunched up there. That is so costly for both of them, and Marco De Buono is going to be kicking himself, and Mario Tump thumped out of the way.
Yeah, that was certainly a quick turn of events for both of those drivers who were in the lead of this pack. Now all the way basically to the back. David Levy now sandwiched between the two kind of rivals of this race, but both of the Cadillacs have gone through, and this is exactly what Amos Lorito will have wanted to see in his
Oh,
mirrors. So now he's just got one of the other Cadillacs, that is Fabio Gregoletto in the mirror, Jules Neal not too far behind that as well, but now both Porsches going at it, and it looks like Mario Tump continuing to fall back, maybe a bit of debris still on the tires of the number 6 that are holding it back. And in the meantime, we've actually lost both of our BMWs in the LMGT3 class. So that's unfortunate. It looks like just at that moment, we've just gone past our leaders in LMGT3. They both look like they were just coming out of the pit lane. So I think, yeah, it looks like that's Matteo Blotto and Kieran Prendergast going at it for what should be the ultimate lead in LMGT3. Arda Urchan has used some strategy to get out in front now, and Cripps as well in the number 59. McLaren is well out in front. Those are the last two cars yet to pit. Sebastian Wunsch, the only car to have made 2 stops. Of course, he had a shunt and some damage early on. Let's see if Arda Urchan comes in this time around. Will the number 55 turn left and make it to the safety of his pit crew? No, he will not. He'll go around yet another time as he gets passed by Bert Knops in the Porsche, the Team Jota Porsche, the gold-colored one. David Marachek, in the meantime, is still under pressure from Jernej Simoncic, who has taken that gap and annihilated it down to under a second now between first and second in the Hypercar class. And in the meantime, Fabio Gregoletto easily gets past Amos Lorito, so easily, in just a few laps' time, achieves what Mario Tump spent the better part of half an hour trying to accomplish, and Fabio Gregoletto now in clean air in 5th position.
yeah, right behind Lorito. Jules Neal starting to overheat, but sadly Clement Gagord, who we saw overheating earlier on in this race, clearly the temperatures got too much, and I think the engine has well and truly let go on the number 3 Cadillac. So Clement Gagord, the Frenchman, is going to be classified as a retirement from this race. But meanwhile, Mario Tump has cleared David Levy in the other Porsche, and he's all over the back of Jules Neal. So Neal's really going to have to manage these temperatures, and he's going to somehow have to get through Lorito, who I think is really, really low on fuel after over-consuming in the early stint of this race. We praised him making those moves, but perhaps it wasn't the clever thing in the long run, and he's just looking so exposed right now as Gregoletto now escaping up the road. Simoncic, by the way, within 0.6 of Marachek. I think you're right. Simoncic has really played the long game here, and Davin Marachek has just got to hold on for these final 5 minutes if he wants to take victory. But can he hold on? That is the question, Braden.
Yeah, Marachek going to be desperately holding on with every last bit of grip he can muster out of the tires. 3/10 the gap now between Simoncic and Marachek, with approaching 5 minutes remaining here around Interlagos. Some smoke piling out of what looks like Jules Neal, I think, just ahead, who has some damage to the front end of that number 311 wheeling Cadillac, and now is going to get past. Oh, not quite going to get past. He's going to try to get past the number 3 of Amos Lorito, who is bleeding positions right now and continues to be the cork in the bottle for these Hypercars. Positions 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, all kind of stuck behind Amos Lorito, who's done a stellar job of defending against Mario Tump, who continues to try to recover from an incident with Marco De Bono, who's fallen all the way back to the 9th position and has not since been able to make a move. It looks like, I think Neal's lost the engine. Neal may have lost the engine.
Oh, what?
No, it looks like smoke's still coming out.
He's really having to slow down dramatically there, because that's let Mario Tump back through, hasn't it? And now he's got to hold off David Levy and a resurgent Marco De Bono trying to go around the outside of him. But while we are focused on this, both of our class leaders are within 0.4. In the case of Hypercar, it's 0.3 between Simoncic and Davin Marachek here. Would love to see that battle as well, if possible. Prendergast is throwing absolutely everything at Blotto, but of course they both pit, so there's no chance of either of them running out of fuel. I think Kieran Prendergast knows it's going to have to take a risky move to take victory. But what is the gap between Simoncic and Marachek? That is going to be the really close one. It's still 0.3 between the pair of them. It is so marginal here. One mistake, one overconsumption of fuel could be all the difference between finishing this race and not finishing on the podium, as Prendergast goes well off track through Mergulio.
Yeah, that brings up another good point for those watching, which is that these drivers are only allowed 3 off tracks before they have to come in and serve a penalty. So that's something that Prendergast is going to have to be mindful of. Obviously, you're going to want to take home a win after the heartbreak of Spa 1 week ago, but you don't certainly want to risk this second position you have, as Matteo Blotto going to have to defend the inside here into turn 1. Kieran Prendergast deep and on the brakes. He's going to have a great late apex through the S's here. The Senna S is going to give him a great opportunity to get a run down the straightaway. Is he going to have a run? The 86 Ferrari, for the time being, holds the position, but Kieran Prendergast maybe just a touch more momentum. He's going to try to make it to the inside, but Matteo Blotto going to block off that move. Fakes left, goes right. Kieran Prendergast to the outside of Matteo Blotto for the lead in LMGT3. Not able to make the move here through turns 4 and 5, but now he's on the inside. That will rapidly become the outside line as they head back to the right-hand side and into a very tight section, and just a little bit of contact now. Not going to give up the position is Matteo Blotto. He's going to take it back from Kieran Prendergast.
Yeah, you saw there was that little bit of misunderstanding. Prendergast almost trying to avoid a collision there with Matteo Blotto. Blotto tried to just get a little bit closer to the racing line, so he had a little bit more room to work with there, and I don't think Prendergast appreciated that one bit. And oh no, Lorito, with 2.5 minutes left to go, he's had to come into the pits, and that has surely blown his chances of finishing in the top 10 here, because surely he just did not have enough fuel to get to the end of the race. But has Jules Neal got enough coolant in that engine to get to the end without blowing up in a spectacular fireball? Because he is tempting fate. That Cadillac is looking worse and worse by the lap. And meanwhile, the battle for the lead in Hypercar, here it is. You can see it on there, and oh, Marek almost held up there by the Ferrari, I believe. That is our leader, Arda Ercan, desperately trying to stay out, I think. Or I think they may have had to pit, haven't they? Because I think it's still, as Liskovitz, sorry. I'm getting completely mixed up with the two Ferraris there, as Blotto is still desperately holding on to the lead in the center. Where do you look? Do you look at the GT3 lead fight, or do you look at the Hypercar lead fight? Because Simoncic is really gearing up here, and Marek is just looking really desperately. He clings on by the skin of his teeth, by the edge of his fingernails to that race lead.
Yeah, anywhere you look out on track, great battles to see here in the Virtual Motorsport Series, but something that's going to be very worrying for the rest of these Cadillacs is the fact that Amos Lorito did have to come in and pit. He now finds himself seconds behind Farinelli, the next car, in 12th position, so that's going to be worrying for our other Cadillacs to see that Amos Lorito, ooh, big slide there, coming through the last couple of corners, and that's going to be worrying for our other Cadillacs to see whether or not they are going to be able to make it on fuel. Kieran Prendergast maybe misses the apex just a little bit and gives up a touch of time to Matteo Blotto, who has not put a wheel wrong yet. And Simoncic continuing to put the pressure on David Marek. No idea where to even look at this point in time, and it looks like they're actually right on top of our leaders, so they're just about to come up to our GT3 leaders. That's going to be interesting to see how those two interact. With less than a minute left to go, Jerne Simoncic putting the pressure on hard for David Marek, who's desperately holding on to that Aaron Lynch Lamborghini to the race lead. He's been fastest in practice, fastest in qualifying. Is he going to be able to hold on to the lead and do the Grand Slam sweep here at Interlagos?
Here we go then, final lap about to begin, and David Marek looking desperate as he tries to hold on to the lead here. Simoncic, has he left his charge a little bit too late though, as we start the final lap of the race, and just one more lap to go then for Marek to hold on, but Simoncic is all over the back of him and desperately looking for the opening that he needs. Marek will have to drive the widest Lamborghini you've ever seen. It's a sea of green for Jerne Simoncic, but he can't get through as the clock is about to run out. There's Prendergast and Blotto just dueling away a few meters ahead. So our two class leaders are going to converge, and this is great news, of course, for Blotto, because it means, oh, there we go, look at the flashing lights on Marek as they go through Ferradura, almost as one.
I think Prendergast is almost out of fuel. He's had to back off significantly from Blotto. Actually, no, he's pitted, so he must have fuel. He's just backed off, it looks like, from the leader, Matteo Blotto. In the meantime, now he's made a move to get a lot closer, but I don't think he's anywhere near close enough to make a move right now. Jerne Simoncic to the inside. Now Marek side by side.
And Marek has just got to hold on.
For the lead.
This is so tense for Magulio. Marek still got the inside, almost off track goes Simoncic. Can he swing it round the outside at the Chungchao? No, he can't. Marek now on the front, and it's a drag race to the line. Can the Lamborghini hold on, or will Jerne Simoncic steal victory at the death? He's thrown everything at this win, but it's not enough. David Marek is going to win here at Interlagos in a heart and mouth finish. And oh, even a bit of overheating from Simoncic. The engine was firing on all 8 cylinders there right at the end. So that was a fantastic finish. And indeed, let's praise Matteo Blotto, because he also held off Kieran Prendergast in a similarly tight duel there, as we're about to see Levy and Tump finish 5th and 6th behind Grigoletto. We also saw a late penalty there for Quidel, who I think has fallen to 14th in his Cadillac. But oh my goodness, Braden. And oh, look at this. Levy backing off, and through goes Mario Tump into... No, it's Levy getting past Tump, sorry. So Mario Tump must have run right out of fuel on the run to the line.
Yeah, not quite able to make it. It looks like even Marokcek and Simičić were so close on fuel, so too was Michi Hoyer in the 3rd position, that they've each had to reset. They can't even come back around for a cooldown lap. Had to pit right away because they're completely out of fuel. So impressive fuel saving from our Hypercar finishers, who were able to make it a full hour on just one tank of fuel. Incredibly impressive, and what a finish between Marokcek and Simičić. Marokcek just able to hold on, and what a feel-good finish for Devin Marokcek.
Yeah, absolutely, because he had so much bad luck at Spa, and it all came good here in Interlagos, despite the most staunch challenge you will ever see from Jene Simičić. He does not give up at any point ever. And we also see a comment in the chat from Prentasinho, which is, I believe, Kieran Prendergast's father, saying, "That was great. Well done, everyone. Well done, my son, Kieran." And well, he might. There. Let's go through, I guess, the GT3 results first then. Matteo Bellotto beats Kieran Prendergast by just under 0.3 of a second, but nonetheless, it's another second place for Kieran Prendergast, our new championship leader. Arda Ercan, despite a dramatic start, was able to hold on to 3rd from Erwin Liskovic, who of course was the one who pit early and gained a load of places. He finishes 4th in the end and jumps Callum Cripps, who had to pit later on. Fabien Ballet, he falls to 6th by the end. A little bit disappointment for the German there, with Louis Gaspar finishing in 7th. And it's Alexei Rassi, good result for Rassi, in 8th, with Regan Mitchell from the very back of the grid to 9th. He will be somewhat satisfied with that, with Michel Rodriguez rounding out the top 10. So we didn't talk much about Rodriguez, but a very clean race there. Valtteri Maninen retiring right near the end, but still classified in 11th, ahead of Sebastian Wunsch. And what a horrible race for Wunsch. It promised so much at the start, but that big collision with Ercan, a horrible amount of damage in the wall, wasn't it, for the German? And Seb Wunsch trundles home in 12th, but at least he does get to the line, unlike Elise Buzita, Marcus Crawford, and of course Kat Bagazia, Ryan Littlemore, Kamal Nawi, and Luca Fingard. Neither of those last two getting to the end of the first lap. So what a difference a week makes for Kamal Nawi, indeed. Meanwhile, Hypercar, Davin Rokcek takes a fantastic win for Lamborghini, and look at that gap, 0.08 of a second between Rokcek and Jene Simičić as they cross the line together. So yeah, Simičić, you could say it may only be 0.08, but 0.08 makes all the difference between winning and having to settle for the runners-up spot. But nonetheless, Simičić maintains his lead in that championship in Hypercar. Another 3rd place for Michi Hoyer. He did clear Amos Lorito early on, but Hoyer was a little bit distant in the end and sort of just had to manage the fuel with Fabio Grigoletto. A good comeback after a tough middle phase of the race to finish in P4 in that fantastic almost 10-car duel for 4th, with David Levy unexpectedly being given the 5th position by Mario Tump over the line. Completely unintentional. I think Tump just had a little bit less fuel and virtual energy than he thought he had on that final lap. Marco De Buono gets 7th for Ferrari, ahead of Julian Gurin. We didn't talk much about Julian, but he quietly came up to 8th to take his best finish of the season so far. So great job from the two Ferraris. Aurelian Brew overcame heating issues to get to 9th. And then Jules Neal, sadly a victim of his own lack of cooling, he finishes P10. Amos Lorito with that late stop didn't quite have the fuel to make it, but he nonetheless put up a fantastic defense. So shout out to Amos Lorito, despite only finishing in 11th. That was a very, very good drive from the Italian, the esports, the manager and head driver coach at Lamborghini Esports, of course. Daniele Farinelli, tough race for the Italian. He finishes in 12th. Bert Knops getting into trouble, unfortunately, early on. He finishes the lap down in 13th with Gaetan Quidel. That late penalty, I believe, for breaching track limits one too many times. He finishes 14th. Clement Gogord, sadly, the engine went kaput, and that was all she wrote, sadly, for the Frenchman, with Kakpa Mariansky and Mark Veit being spun around. So the two Porsches not having a great time out there either. Wow, I'm running out of breath here, Braden. That was you could be forgiven for thinking, oh well, so much less strategy in a sprint race. It's just going to be Davin Rotchek leading out front and winning by miles. But Jene Simčić was determined for that not to be the story. And what a fantastic race there. Hypercar was pretty much up and down the field. All the top 10 were just battling like crazy. And then we had all the strategy going on in GD3 with a fantastic defensive drive from Matteo Blotto to beat Prendergast.
Yeah, there was nothing between them. I mean, the most that gap got to was just about 3.3 or so seconds between Devin Marokchek and Jurnej Simčić. But Simčić, what a run to try to catch back up. Very well done by him to manage the fuel, but you got to feel good for Devin Marokchek doing the Grand Slam, fastest in practice, fastest in qualifying, and winning the race. So very well done by him. He's outrun last week's pole sister and has made it to the end as a winner in the Virtual Motorsport Series. And kudos to Matteo Blotto for doing a fantastic job of defense against Kieran Prendergast, who we already know has incredible pace. And I'm sure with just a few more laps time, Prendergast may have been able to mount even more of a charge. But traffic giveth and traffic taketh away, and Kieran Prendergast just wasn't his day. Second place once again for him.
We see a couple of comments in the chat, by the way. Alex Grigoletto says, incredible Grigoletto. He is the best driver at all. I'm sure no relation whatsoever is Alex. But we also see Callum Cripps, who finished 5th in GT3, saying, that was tough, man. Phew. Trying to see through the Cadillac smoke was a challenge, apparently. So, yeah, well done to Callum Cripps getting to the end of that one. And he had to defend pretty much the entire race, much like Matteo Blotto. So a well-earned 5th there, despite being sort of undercut in the strategy by Erwin Liskowitz then. So there, I think that is pretty much all we got time for, because I think we've come to expect nobody wants to be interviewed by us, Braden, because even though it was a shorter race, they're still out of breath, and I don't blame them.
Yeah, certainly understandable, but want to take the opportunity to thank everyone who has joined us this week and encourage you. We will be live once again at 6 p.m. GMT a week from today.
Yep, that will, of course, be another hour-long sprint race, this time at Sebring, another fantastic track on the 19th of January. And, of course, it really heats up the championship, because it's looking like we're going to be treated to Jurnej Simčić versus Davin Rotchek part 3 then, essentially, which would be an amazing season-long narrative on top of Kieran Prendergast versus whoever ends up ahead of him in GT3. But, yeah, thank you for all those watching as well. And a reminder, you can still get involved yourself in some of the junior VMS categories on Le Mans Ultimate, as well as the Pro Series. Indeed, so get onto the Discord server, and there's links to everything you need, hopefully in the YouTube description, that are ready to go for those that need them. But anyway, I think it's time to wrap up. So from Interlagos, from me, Edward Hunter, him, Braden Hill, and Nicholas Domino on broadcast direction. Thank you very much for watching. Congratulations to Davin Rotchek and Matteo Blotto. They ran it close, but in the end, it was those two that were victorious in Hypercar and GT3 here in Brazil. We'll see you in a week's time at Sebring. Bye for now. We hope you enjoyed that sprint race.